All right. As a quick little introduction, I'm John. I'm the Senior Customer Education Manager at Vivi. So I've been with Vivi now over 6.5 years. I'll be here 7 years next year. Um, my background is in teaching. Was a teacher for about 13 years and then moved into this role. Within my role, very much focused on making sure all our schools know how to use all the different aspects of Vivi. So obviously we've got the classroom side of things, which we've run a bunch of webinars on throughout the year. And now for this particular one, really wanted to focus on what's known as our campus communication tools. So in terms of what we're going to be looking at today, I'll always do just that quick little what is Vivi for those of you who are still quite new to it, give you a quick little overview there, but then really jump into it, look at signage, announcements and emergencies is what we're going to be focusing on today. I will mention most of the session will be looking at signage, more because not that it's a more complex feature, but more it has more layers to it. So there's quite a few more options within it, but we'll definitely have a look at announcements and emergencies as well. As mentioned as well, we will finish up the session with a Q&A. However, you're more than welcome to interrupt me as we go through. I will say just because of my setup here, I do have like Teams open on the side there. So if you see me looking over there, that's what I'm looking at to have a look at the chat. So that's all that's going on there. So very quickly, what is Vivi for those of you who don't know much about it? So Vivi, it is an Australian product. So was founded nearly 10 years ago. Next year will be our 10-year, as we're calling it, our 10-year Viviversary. So it was founded in Melbourne. So Lior, our founder, he's a Melbourne guy. So founded there and then spread throughout Australia and is now international. So we've got big lots over in the US and in the UK, and we're just starting to go into some other languages as well. So starting to go into Germany is where we're going next. Kind of expanding all over the globe. We obviously started as a wireless screen sharing tool, so allowing teachers to share from their laptop through to the classroom display without cables, connectors, all those sorts of things. And then because of that, we then grew a whole heap of other features into it. Obviously, a lot of them were classroom based, but then we went, right, what are some things that our school leaders, IT managers, those sort of people would want to make their lives a little bit easier? And that's where our campus communication tools really grew from. Now, I'm not a death by PowerPoint person, so I'm going to jump out of PowerPoint and go straight into what we're going to be looking at. So, we want to look first of all at signage. So signage, for those who are a little bit, what's the technical term around signage? What is this signage you're talking about? So with signage, if you go into somewhere like a shopping centre and you see the big TV screens that have advertising in it, that's signage. In a school situation, we typically see signage in two situations. So the first one is in common areas. So think like corridors, the front office, those sort of places where the signage is more going to be things like promoting the school, general notices, that sort of stuff. We then see, and this is part of the big advantage with using Vivi for signage, is that the other thing is getting that signage into the classroom. So you can get signage onto the classroom displays. So it's getting it right in front of the faces of the kids and the staff. So it just lets you really get that signage out there. So wanted to run through kind of how signage works, what it all looks like. What I will mention, so I'm using Vivi Central today. This is our administration platform. I will mention I'm logged in as an IT administrator, so I have full access to it. You may have slightly limited more access depending on what level of permission you've been given. But these first couple of things that I'm going to talk about today will be stuff that you'll definitely have permission to access. If you don't have access to it, make sure you chat to your IT person and they'll be able to get that set up for you. So the first thing we're going to look at over in the left-hand menu here is media. So media is basically our online storage drive for all your media items that are going to go onto signage. Now, what I will say, this works like any other online drive in that you can have folders, subfolders, all that sort of stuff. You'll notice I'm a big fan of a good folder for two main reasons. First of all, because it keeps things nice and organized, and my life is disorganized enough, so keeping things in folders makes my life much better. And so I like to do that. The second reason reason I always encourage people to use folders is for those situations where, say, for example, you had sports day the other week and the sports teacher's gone, here's 50 photos that I'd love for you to put up on the screen so the kids can see what they were doing at sports day. And you're like, cool, but they're only going to go on for a week. That's great, but when you upload them, if you don't put them into a folder and you want to delete them at the end, you've got to go through and delete every single one. Whereas if you stick it in a folder, you can delete the entire folder. So it just makes it that little bit easier when you're trying to clean up and that kind of thing. Now, what I will mention with your media drive here, you do have a limit of 20 gig that you're able to have on here. That is quite a lot, I will say. So very few people actually hit that limit as long as you're kind of regularly clearing out. What I will say with that limit as well, it's not a hard and fast limit. So if you hit, 19.9 gig, you're not going to be suddenly cut off. What will actually happen when you get close to the 20 gig, then our support guys will basically send an email going, hey, you're getting close to the 20 gig. Can you clear out some stuff? So yeah, you'll be okay there. Now, in terms of adding media, that kind of thing, you can obviously create folders in here. So I'm going to do a quick little test folder in here to show you what I'm doing. And then we can add in media up in the top right here. So in terms of the media that we can put into here, first up, you can put in files from your computer. So those files can be images, audio files, and video files. With those, it's always standard, like your most common media types. So for example, with images, it's things like JPEG, PNG, that kind of thing. And so you're able to load them in here. The one thing to point out with videos, you will be limited to a maximum of 500 meg. Typically, if the video is 1080p, and as long as it's not 3 hours long, then you'll be fine there. But just be aware, if that original video is like a 4 or 8K video, it can hit that 500 meg really quickly. So just make sure it's at kind of that more the 1080p definition for it. So with those, it is just a matter of dragging and dropping them in. So I've got a few items over here that I'm going to drag and drop in. So I just dragged in a few images, and then the other thing you can drag in is PowerPoints as well. So with images, what it's going to ask you to do, it's going to ask you if you want them to fill the screen or fit to screen. Now, in my case, my images are the correct size in that they're your standard 1920 by 1080. So your normal 16:9, however you want to put the ratio. So yeah, it's your kind of standard ratio there. If they're not, you then get that option where fill to screen, it's going to stretch the image. So it will appear distorted if it's a little bit out of whack, or fit to screen will do the letterboxing. So it'll add the black bars either at the side or along the top and the bottom. I choose whichever one I want, go next. It's going to do that for all my options there. I'm then going to go to my PowerPoint. Now with my PowerPoint, I can choose how long my slide duration is going to be. So this is how long the slides will stay up for. I know there's a bit of information on my slides, so I might want them to stay up for 15 seconds each slide. Once I'm happy with that, I go next and I'll upload that one as well, and done. So you see those are now in there, and so they'll be ready to go. Now you might notice with some items, so things like images, they'll get the status tick straight away because they're just ready to go. With things like PowerPoints and videos, you might get this little exclamation mark when you hover over it, it'll say processing. Don't panic, you haven't done anything wrong. It's just the system getting it ready to go. Typically takes kind of that 30 seconds to a minute for it to process. So we'll see if it's done it in time. Not quite yet, but it'll do that just in the background as I'm working along. Now, in terms of other media you can add into here, you can also add in Google Slides and web-based PowerPoints. Now, with these, the first time you do go to add them in, it will ask you to log into your account. So you'll just log in and then you'll be able to add those in. The main advantage to adding these in instead of like dragging and dropping a PowerPoint in is that these will be live. So if somebody makes changes to the original file, it will reflect through to Vivi. So I see a lot of schools use this for things like daily notices, where instead of having to create an image that you then save and have to upload and all that kind of thing, do it as a Google slide, pop the daily notices in there, and then it can just appear up on the screen. So super simple to do that. So yeah, you can just do those. Then the other thing you can do is links. So the links you can add in. video links. So that's predominantly YouTube video, but it will also support Vimeo as well. Video streams, most people use YouTube Live for video streams. Particularly, I often see it used for the ABC News 24 live stream on YouTube. You can put that in there and that'll work. So I often see it used in the library or if there's like a special event or something. And then websites that can handle that as well. So you just copy and paste the link in and choose what type it is, and then you'll click on the add there. So that's uploading media. That's how you add media into it. Now, the second part of Signage is obviously signage. So two things to talk about before we actually schedule our signage and get it up on the screens. So the first thing is what's known as destinations. Destinations is just how the screens are grouped together, and we'll do the, and so that way the screens will have all the same content on them. So what I see a lot of schools do is group it into things like sub-schools, however your school is divided up. I've just gone with the generic junior, middle, senior, but yeah, however your school is divided up, you could do those sub-schools, have a whole school one in there. Sometimes people will have things like if there's a couple of screens like around the office, they'll have office screens, you know, so whatever it is. So you can group them however you want, and it's just a matter of you create a destination, give it a name, and then you'll be able to add your screens in there. So I'm just going to add in my whole senior school there and create it. So simple as that. So that's now in there, ready to go. Now, my playlist. This is how I'm going to get my media items to play back to back. So again, I'm going to create my playlist and give it a name. Then it's going to give me this little option here where I can now start adding things in. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add in the entire folder that I just created then, which was my test folder, and add that in. So you will see that it's added in my PowerPoint. It's still processing the PowerPoint, but it will add that in once it's ready. And it's added in my images. Now with my images, what you'll see, it's defaulted to them being on screen for 10 seconds. If I'm looking at this and going, let's say this one here, this is my daily music lessons. They kind of need to be on screen for a little bit longer because there's a fair bit of info on there. I can click on this item's duration and just make it a little bit longer. So I'm going to put that on for however long, set it, and then make sure you click save once you've done that. And so you'll see now that one's set for 16 seconds and the others are at 10. Now there is some other content we can add in here. So obviously I could continue adding in some other content that I've got saved. I can also add in widgets. So with the widgets, these are little pre-made things that we've created that you can quickly get live content onto the screen. So the calendar will handle either a Google or an Outlook calendar. So I can put those on, often used in staff rooms. So to have that on the screen in there. Clock will do literally that, put a clock on the screen. So digital or analog or both together. Now the news, you'll have a few options here with what categories of news it's going to do. What I always mention though, it does go through a safe search filter. However, it doesn't go through a serious news filter. So obviously we filter out kind of, you know, anything that wouldn't be deemed appropriate for a school from things like language and stuff like that. However, you know, we obviously have this running in the office, and I was in there the other day and an article appeared about like Ukraine, Russia. So there will be serious news articles that appear on here as well. So I always say, you know your school best. So use it as you think would work for your school. Timer, will do a countdown timer. Often I see this used around parent-teacher interviews. So if you want to get like a looping 10-minute timer up on the screen, you can do it just using Signage. And then the final one is the weather, and that's the one I'll put in so you can see how this kind of works. So with the weather, first up, I can choose between metric and imperial. So if I really want to confuse the kids and put it in Fahrenheit, I could. But that's there obviously because of the whole that we're now in the US. So I can choose where it's going to go. So in our case, our office is in South Yarra. So that's where I'm going to put it. What's also great about this, you're not locked into just the location of your school. So let's say you've got a year level going out on camp, you could set up the weather for where they're going to camp. Or, you know, we used to have, like back when I was in school, we used to have Italian Day because we studied Italian at school. And so we could put up the weather of what it's like in Rome at the moment, you know, so you can do those kind of things. You can choose between a daily or an hourly and then add it to the playlist. So easy to add those kind of things in. Other stuff, I can add in other playlists, so you can kind of have playlist upon playlist in there, so you can get really multi-layered with it. And then the final thing in here is templates. So what templates are, these are pre-made slides that we've created that you can quickly and easily edit to get your own content onto them. So, you know, when you have that moment of, oh, can you get it out on the screen, but I need it on there 2 minutes ago, you can really quickly do this rather than having to go in somewhere else. So all I do, I select the one I want, and then I can just go in, and it's just like your standard sort of thing. So we might have open day, this Friday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., whatever it is that I need to do. When you select different things, you can, for example, change the color. So if you wanted to make them the school colors, you could, that sort of stuff. But once I'm happy, I save and close, and that will then add it into my playlist. Now, the final thing I haven't actually mentioned, we have just launched a brand new integration with Canva, and so it will allow you to push Canva content through to Vivi as well. So if you do use Canva, what you'll be able to do when you're in Canva, you just need to add in the Vivi app. So you can search for it here within apps. If you just search for Vivi, you'll find it in there. So be able to add that. Once it's added, it'll appear over on the left here, so you can select it. The first time you use it, it will just ask you to connect it to Vivi, and then you'll be able to publish it in there, and so have your content through onto Vivi there. I will mention with this, currently it is not live, so it is not a static image, because like if it's a presentation, it'll scroll through them, but like it's whatever you push across is what will appear on the screen. So you can't update it in Canva and it will automatically update in Vivi. You'd need to re-push through. Currently working on the ability for that to happen, so watch out for that, but don't have a timeline on that yet. So yeah, new integration that we've launched in there as well. So I've got my playlist ready to go, and now I want to get it onto my screens. So to do that, I go back to Signage, and I'm going to create a signage schedule. So first up, I'm going to add in some content. So in my case, I'm going to add in the playlist I just made. And then I'm going to go next. Now it's going to ask me to give it a name and choose where it's going to go. So we're doing my destination, where we're going to go to the test one that we created. And again, next. Now, this is where the actual scheduling happens. So first up, you're going to choose the date that it's going to appear, that it's going to start on. Handy to know, so that if you've got a special event coming up, so like if it was open day this Friday and I wanted to have, you know, the nice pretty promo video playing on all the screens, you could do that. So you could set it up ahead of time. Because mine is just going to be like those regularly recurring like daily notices, I just leave it as today's date. I can set my start and end time, so whatever hours my school is open. So for example, if my school closed at 4, I could do it there. I'm going to leave it at 5 just so you can actually see it appear on my screen. Repeat. So this is how it's actually going to repeat on a daily basis. So I'm going to do daily. I'm going to turn off Saturdays and Sundays because we're not in the school then. And then you can also choose an end date. So what I see a lot of schools do is set their end date as like the end of the school year or the end of term, just so that there's kind of that, apologies, just so there's that date when it'll end, and you can go, right, we're going to go in and do a bit of a refresh then. Now, what precedence and priority are about? Precedence, so by default, when signage is playing on the classroom displays, then if a teacher hits share screen, it will override the signage. And similarly, if a teacher is sharing their screen and a signage schedule starts, it'll just run in the background until the teacher stops sharing, and then the signage will start playing. What interrupt will do is if that signage schedule starts, it's going to kick the teacher off. Interrupt and lock will kick them off and stop them from sharing their screen again. Now, I always say, if you're going to use this, pre-warn your teachers, just because otherwise you'll have all these teachers doing panic because Vivi's suddenly not working, and that's why. So yeah, just pre-warn them before. Priority, what this is for is, so by default, Vivi just plays one schedule at a time. What you can do is you can multi-layer them. So if there's a clash between them, then you can choose different, which one is going to be prioritized. So that's what the priority is for. So again, do next, gives me an overview, and so I click on schedule. It's going to check for conflicts up the top there. If there was a conflict, it would tell me, and then I'd just be able to go there. And so now you'll see, because mine was scheduled to start, so it's now started playing through. So that will start pushing all that content through to my displays. And so they're all now playing that particular content through there. Now, looks like, oh, no questions come through at the moment. Great. So that's pretty much it for signage. I'm just going to show one more thing, but if you do have any questions about any other questions about signage, feel free to unmute or pop them in the chat. But I'll show you, just as you're kind of putting anything into the chat, I will show you one last thing with signage. So with signage as well, we do have the ability for you to do what we call two zone. So with two zone, what you can do, you can have a widget on one side and then your media content in the middle. So with the widget, so it's these ones that we looked at before, and so I can put those in so you can have multiple things on. So I do actually have, here's one I prepared earlier. So this is just a clock and some photos. So that should appear onto my screen shortly. There we go. So I've got the clock over on the side there, and then the photos will start loading onto here, and put those on there. So it's just a way that you can get kind of that multiple layers of content onto the screen at any one time. The final thing I will mention with signage, I don't have a live version to show you yet, but we do have a new type of playlist coming that will just make it a little bit easier to add in content, refresh content, have content expire at specific times, certain things like that. Watch out for that. We're hoping it will be ready before you break up for the end of the year, but we'll definitely send out some information once all that's ready. So watch out for that one. So that is signage. I think, no, there's no questions come through that I can see. So let's have a bit of a look at announcements. So announcements is the second part of our campus communication suite. So with announcements, it will let people who have permission, so it's only select people, either send text-based announcements to the classroom displays or go live to the classroom displays. Now, there is a little bit of setup that needs to be done beforehand using this groups option, where you create announcement groups, give permissions to people, but I'll talk right at the very end about where you can get some more information on doing that. But this is what it then looks like when somebody's given permission. So this is what the Vivi app would normally look like, and they get this new announcements tab. So with this, with the text announcements, essentially they're going to add a location, and then send their message. So please send the senior basketball team to the gym at lunch. Whoops. Choose how long it's going to go on screen for, and then send. So what's going to happen, all the displays in my senior school are going to get this text appear right at the very top. That's now saying exactly what I typed in there. So that's sitting up there. That will go over the top of anything. So signage, a teacher sharing, anything like that, that will be up the top. So essentially it's designed to be able to replace the PA system when you can't use the PA system for whatever reason. Like, you know, we've just had senior school exams, and like, I know what it was like for us. We weren't allowed to make announcements during senior school exams, and so during that time you might go, this is actually an easy way to be able to get those announcements out there. So really easy to use that. The second part of it is then video and audio. So this allows people to go live to the classroom displays just using their laptop's webcam and microphone. So that's my laptop sitting right there, and so that's what it's picking up. And so I can choose where it's going to go, choose my webcam and microphone, and then start. And so it's going to now push that out to the classroom displays. Just takes a few seconds for it to push through. There is a slight lag there. So now my students, as you can see behind me, are seeing that live stream of me. So I can now do the, hey guys, here's the announcements for today, blah, blah, blah. So essentially created as an alternative to, like, if, for example, the principal says, hey, I really want to run an assembly, but I've only got like 2 minutes of stuff to do. And so there's no point me getting all the students together just for 2 minutes. So it just gives that capability to go live, for those select people and be able to do those announcements without having to, gather absolutely everyone together. So really awesome system and great to be able to use that. Final thing to talk about just in our last few minutes is emergencies. So with emergencies, these are obviously for use in an emergency, and essentially it overrides the classroom displays to put written content onto the display. So works in conjunction with your existing emergency management system. So the sirens and announcements and that sort of stuff works in conjunction with that. So allows for that visual side as well. So obviously we have some schools that really like it because they have deaf students, and for a deaf student, a siren means nothing. So this gives them that visual aspect. But even just we have schools who need to do things like silent lockdown. So if they've got somebody on site, they don't want a siren to go off. They just want that visual aspect. Everyone has to see it. Now, we have some basic ones in here. These are the standard response protocols, but you're able to create your own types. So you can create ones that are relevant to you. So for example, this is one I've created in here for extreme weather. We've got some schools in Queensland who have cyclone ones. We've got a school in New Zealand who has an earthquake one. So whatever makes sense for your school. Once it's set up, then they can be triggered in a few different ways, but one of the ways is just here through Vivi Central. So I can trigger it. We're going to do our extreme weather to everywhere and create. So what's going to happen is that all the screens in my school are now going to show that particular emergency messaging. So that's all going to be up on there. Everyone's now locked out of these screens as well. So if somebody tries to connect to a classroom and share to it, they won't be able to. They'll see that emergency messaging in there as well. So, prevents that. There's always that one teacher who goes, "Oh, no, it's fine, guys. It's just a drill. Let me finish my lesson and then you can go to it." So it stops that as well. So it just allows that particular messaging to go out. Definitely something that's worth looking into, because the other thing I will mention, all the stuff that I've talked about today is all included as part of Vivi. So there's no extra charge for any of it or anything like that. It's all included as part of it. So it's there, so you might as well use it. So definitely worth having a good look at it. Now, I know we're at the end time, so I do apologize. I spoke a little bit longer than I planned on. But if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them. But what I will mention, just as anyone's typing any questions, things like that, please feel free to reach out. The email's just disappeared from there. I had my email address on there. It's just john@vivi.io. I don't know why that's disappeared. That's weird. So yeah, it's john@vivi.io. You're more than welcome to reach out to me if you do have any questions. We do also have a brand new learning platform. So it's learning.vivi.io. We've just launched our signage course, and we are about to launch our announcements and emergencies course. Basically, the emergencies one is done. The announcements one, it's just getting a final proofread from my boss. And so it should be live later this week. So definitely feel free to jump onto those and work through those particular courses. As I mentioned, there's that bit of setup both for announcements and emergencies. So those courses will run through how to do all that setup in there. Also, would love it if you scan the QR code and give us any feedback at all. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, happy to take those. Or if you do need to run off, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we can then wrap up for everyone.